Apyayantu mamangani vakpranaschakshu shrotramatho balamindriyani cha sarvani sarvam brahma upanishadam maham brahma nirakuryam mama brahma nirakarot anirakaranam astva nirakaranam me astu Tadatmani nirateya upanishatsu dharmaste mayi santu te mayi santu om shanti shanti shanti. Today we are going to turn this into a practical somewhat application of how do you apply these five koshas and the three bodies, the gross body, subtle body, and the causal body, into everyday life. And the reason for this is because Vedanta is not just about theory, it's also about how to integrate it in one's life. Otherwise it becomes too much intellectual, too much head stuff. So I'm going to give us some common examples that I've done before, wrote out, some common words or phrases that we go through in normal situations. And I want us to all engage and see which of these statements does it belong in one of these five koshas. The reason for this is so we can start to see how in real life, when we go through common triggers, that they actually are, that's their job. They're just an expressions or a faculty of one of these koshas. So if there's a feeling, then that feeling is obviously going to be part of Manomaya kosha. So it's our job to be aware of these feelings or these thoughts and constantly discriminate them, or at least identify which of these koshas they belong to. Because we spoke that the human being is designed by the mechanism of these five koshas put together. That's what makes you as a human being. A plant, for example, also has a subtle body, but it's not as sophisticated. So does an animal have a subtle body, but it's not as sophisticated. So as soon as we have this mechanism, you could say each layer put together and the five layers compiled, assembled, we have a label called a human being. Now because these experiences, because each one of these layers has a personality, then it exudes a certain attribute about it. For example, the physical, the Annamaya kosha, exudes the attribute of senses. In other words, pain. If there is pain, then it's going to cause us to know about that. If there is a certain emotion in the vital air, there's not vital air, but the Manomaya kosha, then it's going to exude an emotion, whatever the emotion is. So because these personalities are constantly present, they're never not present because you have a body, then what tends to happen is, since Atman, Om, pervades all these five personalities, it seems to be apparently conditioned by the attributes of these five personalities, which is what causes the big problem in the world, is that we take these, whatever occurrences are happening in each of these five koshas, and we say it's happening to me. In other words, it's happening to Om. But it seems like it, even though Om is, Atman is free of the attributes occurring within the realms of each of these five layers. Okay, so let's say there is, we'll do now some practice. Let's say there is a fearful thought, or let's say you're fearful of sharing your thoughts. For example, in class or in a conversation. Now, when we're in a group and we want to say something, but we hold back. We can all relate to that. Now, where would that be in these koshas? Mental. Yeah, because it's a feeling. And also, it's going to be intellectual, because obviously the intellect has decided, being influenced by the mental, and it's now decided based on the emotion of fear, the best course of action is not to speak. That's the intellect. But now, where does the particular first trigger of that fear occur? If we look at this chart. bliss, the Anandamaya kosha. In other words, there's a tendency, an impression to hold back, because it is likely that previously one has held back, and so they just repeat that behavior in the future. So let's say once again that happens, and we say, well, I don't want to share. So how now do we put this into practice, into real life inquiry practice? How do we justify this knowledge and turn it into a practical application? What would we do? Can someone give me an example?
We recognise it's a protective mechanism.
Yeah.
And protecting ourselves.
Yes.
And we have the courage to actually break through that.
Yeah. So
understanding the mechanism.
Good. So John, yes.
Yep.
So John has said protecting ourselves. That's right there. That's enough. Just it's a protective mechanism. So in other words, all we're doing is acknowledging that that's just a function. It's not necessarily a vasana, but it's also a function there to preserve our sense of security. It's inbuilt. So then now, what do we do after that? Do we just do we stop there and then not share, or do we decide to share anyway? Because see, if you don't share, right, then what are you doing? You're silently confirming that fear is me. I'm fearful. Om, which is free of fear, is fearful.
You've got to disown the feeling and actually.
Good. Yeah. So so how will we put that into practice?
Observe it. Be detached from the feeling and actually look at it.
Good. Yeah. And also maybe even share just a little bit, but not the whole thing. Maybe there's a whole story you want to share. Maybe just share just a little bit.
But does that not go back into an intellectual loop? Because observing it is the first instant.
Yeah.
But then the second instance is to re-intellectualize what you do with the observation. Is that
That's also possible, yeah. So see, the point here is there's no particular yes or no here. There's no, this is how it's done. It's your way. As long as it's inquired into, as long as it's looked into and observed, as you said, then that's enough. That's called self-inquiry. See, inquiry is a way of life. It's not about asking, who am I, closing your eyes and waiting for the answer. Because that's too, like, what's going to happen? Or what am I, or who am I? It doesn't work like that. It's a way of thinking, questioning everything that happens in your experience all the time. Having a very curious mind about your experience and the world which it contacts. Okay, this time I'm really getting it. You get something really good, something really profound, and you say, this is it. This time I'm really getting it. And it's genuine. It's a genuine feeling. It is. No one can dispute it. You absolutely feel like you're getting it. Very common. Which kosha does that belong to?
is it intellectual shade?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. A bit of bliss in there as well.
Yes, bit of bliss, right? Spilled out, right? Yeah. So that means, what do we do then? This time I'm getting it. Okay, so let's say that happens. And say, this is so good, I'm getting it. It's all clear. What do we do? Because that's a big trap.
Yeah, that's what I was just.
Because if I fall for that, then I'm what? I'm once again affirming that I'm not only the bliss but also the thought, back into the intellect. And we observe it, and we say, well, this is great. This is the intellectual quantifying this experience, trying to put a name and a label onto it, and also a little bit of emotion added, and also there's a bliss, as you said, Martin, and it's fine, but this is still not me. This is witnessed, this is known by me, but it's not me. You've read those books, right, by biographies of, this is what they mostly have. They have an experience, right, of some profound epiphany or some, I don't know what they call it, awakening or something. And they write a whole book and it becomes a bestseller or really famous. And what do they usually, what's the common theme? The common theme goes like this. And then and something happened, and suddenly I had this realization that I'm not this person who's experiencing this. I must be somebody else. And then this flood of emotion and just bliss and relief just started to penetrate my being, and then I felt so free, and I was just so blissed out, and it was just the most wonderful experience that I've ever had. So they're talking about an experience, very common. But what the problem with that is, what's the problem with that? If you just like stop there and don't inquire into it.
Just the jiva owns it, I guess. And then
Yeah,
you go away, just
it's owned by the ego because it's the owner of the, and not only that, but it's going to end. It's time-based. See, this is a big thing. Anything that has a beginning, it's not it. Because Atman is eternal. So as soon as you say, this is it, it's not it. Because it began in time. So what does that mean? Before it wasn't there? So that means if that experience has not been there before, it's at the same duration, at the same intensity, it's not it. It's just another experience, a combination of one of these 5 koshas. You see? So you say kindly, okay, great, but it's not I. You go back to that one because in whose presence this experience is known for what it is, and stay with that one.
You can treat that as entertaining.
Yes. and therefore you don't write a book, right? You never become popular. What if all this isn't true? Quote. That's a doubt. No matter what school we go to, what teaching, or to whomever we listen to, we eventually may not always come to a point and say, what if all this is not true? What if the rishis got it wrong? Or the whole Vedanta is just the whole thing's wrong? Last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago, we spoke about the mind, which has a doubter factor in it. See, it doesn't matter what the content of the doubt is, it's still a doubt. You remove the content, the theme still remains as a doubt itself. And that belongs to the Manomaya Kosha mental sheath. So you, once again, as Martin said, witness it, observe it, but don't get pulled into it. Because what happens if we do, then the next course of action happens to be, well, I'm just going to choose another school that sounds better. But guess what? Even that school is going to eventually trigger a doubt. What if this isn't real? And so just the path of searching never ends. She doesn't like me. A colleague or somebody that you want to get to know, or whoever it is. There's a feeling of not being liked, maybe for the day or for the moment. Feeling, definitely. I mean, and what happens with a feeling like that? It doesn't happen just once, does it? It happens, there's a repetition to it, implying it must be. Because it's a tendency. That means if there's a repetition to anything, it has a tendency to repeat it. So therefore, we once again look at it, and then what do we do if we feel we're not liked? What's one thing that we could do to help out? Because see, just saying just witness it is not good enough, right? That, a 12-year-old can teach that, oh, just witness everything and just stay within the self. We need to get proactive about what's showing up. So what's something that we can do when we feel we're not being liked?
Just accept the situation for what it is.
Okay.
Or ask if it's true.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, like Byron Katie, right? Or even just go up to the person and compliment them about something, and see their response. So you're being proactive. You see, you're engaging with the world, because it's easy just to stay in the mental process and just kind of settle, accept it, and settle the accounts with myself. But there's also that factor of actually engaging with the other, because how is that person different from you? Sarvam Brahmaha, everything is one. So it's not just about staying here, it's also about participating, transacting with the trigger which is bringing that up. In other words, reconciling the experience with that trigger which has caused it.
Testing that emotion, testing that mental observation.
That's right. I don't like him or her. What kosha is that? Okay, when there's no like, I mean, is there an emotion involved? Dislike. Another vasana, isn't it? See, because when we don't like someone, why is that? Because they trigger something within us that suddenly causes that tendency to spill through the intellect, and then the intellect justifies why I don't like them. And then the intellect gives good, valid reasons why they're not liked. So, accept, this is the vasana, this is a tendency, this doesn't belong to me. Anything else? Any other ideas? If we don't like somebody, what could we actually proactively do?
Think of things that are admirable about them or something?
A what?
Are admirable about that person?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. In other words, go and up to them and say something that you generally notice about them, which you admire. Because why? Then you're negating that tendency and you're doing a reversal onto it. You're putting an antonym to it, because that person is you. I mean, there's no difference. That person is appearing in you. There's no person out there, and that emotion, don't like, that's appearing in you. Nobody else knows that you don't like him. Only you know that you don't like him, right? So that means it's in your mind. It's in your intellect. So therefore, go and engage and mention something that you do like about him. Next one. Did you ever feel like you were right? A lot. This happens so often. That is, we have a certain idea about how things are, and then we have our reasons, right? And then we participate and we say, no, I'm right. That's your stuff. That's your stuff. That's not mine. That's your stuff. Hello, Gareth. So, and then what happens after we think we're right? Conflict. Either party, either myself or him or her, there's a lack of peace between us. There's contraction. See, even if you are right, why are you identified with that thought if that thought belongs to the Vijnana Maya Kosha? Even if somebody tells me that it's something that you absolutely know is true, like someone says to you, you're a man, let's say, and someone says you're a woman. Why do you even care? Try to protect. The thought's not even yours. The body wasn't even given to you. You didn't even create your body. It was given to you by Ishvara. So why are you trying to own something and protect something which you didn't even create? We didn't create our emotions nor our thoughts. We were given those thoughts and emotions from books, from the society, from the media, from other teachers. And now we're trying to protect what's not even ours? What does that mean? I am this thought, therefore I'm going to protect myself. But Atman is free of thoughts. Yeah. It's a big one, and it comes in very subtle ways. Like even in the spiritual world, one would say a little bit about Vedanta, and then the yogi will come, different ideas about what moksha is. And then now, let's say the yogi comes up and says, no, you're wrong. And he gives these reasons, and you say, no, I know I'm right, because, this is what the Upanishads say, the eternal texts, what the rishis have devoted their entire lives researching and observing without being involved in society, so they weren't clouded by subjective thoughts. They were able to be completely objective and clear, and not only one rishi has observed the same phenomenon, but multiples through generations. And I say this all to this yogi, what am I doing? What am I trying to protect? That's right. The ego which has a sense of feeling good because of this knowledge. And if I end up being wrong, then because I'm invested in the emotion which that ego is providing me, which is confidence, then that confidence is going to be stripped away from me. So what this leads us is a conclusion, is that I've been discussing about the contents of these 5 koshas. And that principle which pervades those 5 koshas. So in other words, Satya and mithya. So if we summarize this conversation, we have 2 parts. Is that knowing the difference between Satya and mithya. Satya means not changing, and mithya means changing. So not only knowing the difference between Satya and, which is easy, anyone can do that, just remain in the unchanging, go inwards, easy. But acknowledging and still proactively addressing circumstances within the realm of mithya. Because what's the problem if we just say, no, that's all just change. It's a dream, it's just a body, mind, intellect, it's none of this is mine, I am the unchanged. What's the problem with that? If we push away or deny something that obviously needs to get addressed. Remember Sarvam Brahmaha, everything, nothing is two.
Yeah, so it's all consciousness.
Yeah, all consciousness. In other words, because see, it's like the wave, right? It's like the ocean. Let's say 5 waves. And let's say I'm wave 1. And all the 4 waves around are, let's say one wave is marriage, the other wave is friends, the other wave is financial security. And I go, that's all just worldly stuff. But what is each one of those waves of? Water. What am I of? water. So there's no difference. In other words, we're not here saying, go and just, no, I'm water. I'm that unchanging principle. I'm Satya. But still acknowledge the reality, acknowledge that there are circumstances to attend to, there is a world to address, and everything is Ishvara anyway. See, even your body is given to you by Ishvara, so why would I not return my effort back to Ishvara, the world? So obviously means both sides, so it's an art. You see, never losing track of the unchanging principle, I, and still getting involved and participating fully and dynamically in the ever-changing world. That's a mark of a mature character. Yeah, so we're not interested in denying one, and that anyone can do that. We're interested in harmony. It's a harmonious approach to life, because as you said, it's all is consciousness, yeah, appearing as the world. But how is this body different from the world? Because the world is 5 elements. This body is 5 elements. Thoughts of the 5 koshas are 5 elements. Or we could take a different approach. The world is 3 gunas. This body is 3 gunas. Everything is 3 gunas. So how can I reject the world if the one that's rejecting the world is of the same substance which the world is of? And the world is Ishvara, so I'm rejecting Ishvara. And Ishvara gave me this body. That means that one who gave me this body, and I go, I don't need that. That one I'm rejecting. That means I even as a person, even depend on Ishvara to reject. Yeah. Consciousness is functioning through the physical body, and it expresses through the physical gross body, and it expresses itself as the senses, as feelings on the eyes, perception, hearing, taste, so on. When consciousness, that same consciousness, is functioning through the subtle body, then it seems seemingly conditioned by the contents of the subtle body. And when that consciousness is functioning or operating through the causal body, then it seems as if it's conditioned by your personality, because that's what the causal body is, your personality. So you see what we're saying here? We're saying same consciousness. When it's operating through the gross body, then certain procedures happen, a sense of senses, and it seems like, well, I like the touch of the skin, but why can I say that? Because the body is pervaded by consciousness. That same consciousness, unaffected, uncontaminated by any of the experience in mithya, when it pervades through the subtle body, the mind, intellect, then it appears as if conditioned by emotions and intellect. That's why we say, I think, I feel, and so on. And that same consciousness, which is always functioning through your causal body, when it is functioning, we say, well, this is who I am as a person. So that means, in terms of discriminating, knowing that, yes, there is an experience of the world, but that experience is only possible because of that consciousness, which I am, which pervades the 3 bodies or the 5 koshas. So you see what we're getting at? This is not some kind of an experience. A wise person doesn't have some kind of an experience or some kind of state that is different from an ordinary person on the street. They just know this and accept this. So as Gareth was saying, why is it that we have a hard time accepting this? It's just simply because from day one we've been told everything other than the truth, everything other than the fact that we are free of the experience. We've been conditioned to say, well, I am the experience. I am the toothache. I am the sore tummy. I am the bad student in the class. I am the so on. So 20, 30, 40 years of conditioning, come on, you got to give yourself a break. That's why it's not so easy to just sort of, put it away and just go, you know what, I accept it. I have no doubts. And it's not even a state of kind of, being smart about it. Like, oh, I'm consciousness. I'm just gonna hold that thought. It doesn't work like that. You know why? If you hold the thought, I am consciousness, where are you trying to hold that thought? In the mind. And mind is the realm of mithya. And the mind is what? What do we say about mithya? Changing. So that means that thought, I am conscious, we're trying to hold what is unchanging and timeless in a principle which is limited and changing, so it doesn't last. It happens very often. When someone gets a good epiphany in a particular class, they'll come back, I said this last week, 2 or 3 months later, and then go, oh my God, I lost it. I was so clear, but I lost it. So that instantly tells me that when they got it, they didn't get it. It was just a really profound thought, and they kept it in the intellect. And they said, I need to keep, and it was probably like, I need to keep this, I need to keep that. I hope I don't forget. It doesn't work like that. Because we're trying to hold this, we're trying to make it a thought which doesn't last. And the mind's nature is changing. So that means the thought, I am consciousness itself, is going to change into something else. And when it does, I'm going to say, my God, I don't know who I am anymore. And then, we have to chase that experience all over again. All right, let's change the tone of the conversation and go through this long mind map, which I don't think we'll cover, but the reason, this mind map contains 3 parts. First of all, we're going to talk about what is Vedanta, what is the purpose of the Upanishads, what is moksha, and common mistakes made even when we get this knowledge. Common mistakes that are subtle and yet they're very important not to fall into. And then the secret of living Vedanta as in real life. Okay, first of all, I'm going to start with 2 types of goals. Now the first goal is apraptasya prapti. Repeat after me. Apraptasya prapti.
Apraptasya prapti.
Now, the picture gives it away. If we want something and we don't have it, that's called apraptasya prapti. In other words, let's say I don't have muscles, or I don't have a relative knowledge in the world, how to be an engineer. Then what I will do is I will do certain actions, certain procedures, and then I will obtain what I didn't have. Very clear. This is the world of the relative. Okay, so that means that I want something, I don't have it right now, so I apply action, whether it's learning, whether it's exercise, whether it's pranayama, with you in different art forms, whether it's college, whatever it is. So that's the world of the relative. Now, Vedanta is praptasya prapti. Repeat.
Praptasya prapti.
Okay. Now, what does praptasya prapti mean? Well, we start by saying that Vedanta isn't about developing anything. What you're doing in Vedanta is you're discovering what's already present. You see the difference? There's no course of action that you can do to try to become knowledgeable, know yourself. Because you're always the self. You're never not present. You don't have to do anything right now to increase your sense of existence, do you? There's nothing you can do about it. You just exist. So that's what we're saying. Praptasya prapti is no action can be done to discover one's nature, even though, ironically, you need to apply action. For example, coming to class and reading the scriptures. But what I mean by that is there is nothing you can do to, quote, become. Because I said at the beginning, awareness is eternal. That means it's always present. It's never not present. So that simply means that knowing what's already present, that's what the second category is, and accepting that once we discover that it's already present. Because sometimes we discover, for example, let's say gravity, and we go, yeah, maybe I just, I don't think that's true. Maybe I just had a thought that that doesn't really reflect the truth of the apple falling off the tree. Maybe I was just in some kind of a state, so we just brush it off. That can happen too. So the second category involves observing what is already present. For example, let's say E equals mc squared. That's what Einstein, it's simply a formula that he came up with, or there's some stories that said he didn't discover it, he borrowed it from elsewhere. Doesn't matter. So it simply says that energy transforms into matter and vice versa. Matter transforms into energy. Now, did Einstein have to create this law of the universe? No. He simply discovered it, and he created a formula which very succinctly explains it, and is quantifiable and non-disputable by the scientific community. Similarly, did Newton, when sitting under a tree, I don't know what he was doing, but yeah, I would like to know, and he saw an apple fall, did he have, he observed this apple and he thought about in the form of an inquiry, what force causes this object to be pulled down? That's what we mean by the second category, praptasya prapti. That is, you inquire about what is already obvious. So we could say that Newton simply discovered gravity. Did he create gravity? No. He quantified it and put nice ideas about it.
So he observed it.
He observed what was already present. So similarly, Vedanta is praptasya prapti, just like discovering a law that is already present. Now, that even limits things, because even using gravity, someone's going to say, well, there's no gravity, on another planet. So that's every example in mithya has a limitation. Right? So just examples, right? So don't get caught up with trying to dispute the example and then brush it off with another better. It's just a pointer. So what we're saying is, with Vedanta, there's nothing that you need to do to become who you already are, because you already are who you already are, and you never were anything other than who you already are. So the summary is, all we're doing in Vedanta is going through a certain curriculum to remove common doubts that are residing and presiding within the mind, which prevents the full assimilation and the acceptance that, hey, I am, this experience is fine. I'm always experiencing myself, but parallel to the experience of myself as the ever-present self-evident I'm also experiencing the world. Isn't that your experience? Think about it. There's always two experiences. There's always two, right? But say two. There's always two experiences in your experience. Just being alive. One is a general sense of existence. Can you deny that? No. And two, parallel to the general sense of existence is what? Sounds, images, the 5 sensory data. They're always together. So what a wise person comes to accept is, yes, the experience still continues of the 5 sensory data, but amidst that, I know that I am that unchanging principle, which in reference, I can tell that there is changes. Because you cannot tell there's changes if there is another changing principle. You can only tell there's changes if there's a static, fixed principle because of which you're able to, from that reference point, see the changes. I use the example in the train where you can only tell the train's moving in reference to a static object outside. Now, when it comes to you as a person, it's a reverse. You're the one that's static, and you can see the changes moving about. So in itself, that lets us know that there must be something that is always still, never moving, ever present, and it never moves. Now, then why do we go? I went shopping. So we're not saying change your language and try to be smart about it. It sounds weird. It's just that be conscious when we use our language, because our language can really reenact that trigger and reinforce the idea that I am moving. So it's still fine to say I am driving, I am going, but be aware that no, I'm actually that one in whose presence this body is known to be moving. You see? Okay. So here is just saying that the way to remove praptasya prapti is by removing ignorance about what always was present all along. Tell me this, was gravity non-existent before Newton discovered it? No. So that means even though there is total ignorance about it, mass ignorance, let's say universal ignorance, does that mean that it's simply that Atman doesn't exist? No. You see, because it's just a matter of discovering what's already present. Just like Newton had to come to under a situation, a circumstance that caused him to go, and inquired about the situation and goes, gravity. Yeah. So therefore, Vedanta is simply removing ignorance about your nature, and guess what then comes out, which is already present? You, Atman. unchanging principle.
So the unconscious into the conscious. Is that what we're talking?
What?
Something that's unconscious, like gravity is going on around you, but you're unconscious.
Yes, yes.
But you're actually
Unconscious incompetence.
making that into a conscious.
That's right. That's right. And so the Upanishads are like, let's say Newton didn't sit under a tree, right? The Upanishads are like bringing the book to Newton and saying, there is gravity. Just, here's a proof. Just watch an object falling. Step 3. The force that causes the object to fall is called gravity. Step 4. Now go and inquire into that. That's what the Upanishads. They let us know what's already present. So Upanishads is not about believing. It's about simply accepting the eternal statements which are just universally true and which you discover to be true once you inquire into them. Yeah.
So it's the unchanging.
The unchanging, yeah. Okay, so for example, this just reiterates the idea, is that Atman is already whole. That's just a fact. It's already whole and complete because it pervades the whole universe. And no action can make it whole. That means there's nothing that you as a person can do to make whole what's already whole. You're just wasting your time. And 3, it's only about knowing my nature as the whole. And how do I do that? By removing the false notions that I'm not the whole. That's why, we chase things in the world, because we think we're not the whole. And we think if we get the thing, we're going to feel like whole. Yeah. All right. So now I want to put a cautionary note, because throughout this course, we're going to be going through details, right? And there's going to be a lot of different methodologies, different approaches to talking about the very same thing. Now, the cautionary point is, don't think because there's so much detail that you have to know it all. You see, all Upanishads, we need to ask, what is the purpose of the Upanishads? Their only purpose, despite their various ways of approaching the same truth, is to let us know that despite the appearances, there is that one substratum which is unchanging, and that substratum unchanging is you. That's all they're doing. So that means that throughout the course of the time, when I bring these different ideas and Sanskrit words, don't think like, oh my God, I need to know this to discover my nature. 0. It's just there as a helping point for a different temperament of the person. Because I say one thing, it works for Shini. I say another, it doesn't work for Kelsey. And then vice versa. So everyone has a different temperament. That's why we also have Jnana Yoga for the intellectuals who are less into emotional. And we have Karma Yoga who are both intellectual and they are emotional. And their temperament is constant movement. And then we have Bhakti Yoga is for those who are emotional. That's why we have that's called devotional. Why? Because it's for those emotional people. Yeah. So that means we provide you different paths and they work for one, but they don't work for another. Okay. So now we know the purpose of, and one common example is when we get to stage 2 of this course, we're going to get to the Panchikaranam, or maybe not, I'm not quite sure now, how the 5 elements combine to form this world. Like why is it, how do you create a tree, and then how do you create, let's say, a rock, and then water? How does all this come about by the mixture of these 5 elements? Very fascinating, detailed, complex teaching, but it's just total intellectual, but you don't have to know it. It's there as entertainment, right? It's interesting. So that's what I'm saying. When it comes up, don't go, oh my God, this is too intellectual, I'm getting out of here. No, it's not for you. All right, so now...
Just to last point about the different types of yogas. Is there a finite amount of yogas, or is there...
Raja Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Karma Yoga.
4.
Yeah, Raja Yoga is for, they say, for the mystics, and that is for mainly, that's like Kriya Yoga. That's mainly for attending to the gross body, both the Annamaya Kosha and Pranamaya Kosha. And what happens in Raja Yoga is you so well attune the body and the Pranamaya, that it automatically affects the mind and intellect. So it stills the mind and intellect. Because they say the body-mind connection. So by affecting the gross body, that is the Annamaya Kosha and the Pranamaya Kosha, that automatically ends up affecting and stilling the mind and the intellect. Now that's for mystics. They like to experience. They like to have experience of peace. Jnana yoga is for the intellectuals. That means they need rational explanation how all this is created. The emotional people, the bhaktis, the devotional, they're not interested in intellectual stuff. They walk out. They say, you can't know the Lord by using your intellect. We agree. But you also cannot know just the Lord by using your emotion. So there's a temperament suitability for each person. That's why we have 4 yogas. We have karma yoga, which is a mixture and is especially important for today, which is a combination of intellectual and emotional. The changes that we have today is just ongoing. One moment we're emotional, and next moment we're rational. That's the world today, and we alternate between the two. For that, you need karma yoga.
Right.
And then what's the other one I haven't mentioned?
Is hatha yoga a separate yoga? Or?
Hatha yoga is Raja yoga.
That's right. Raja.
Raja yoga. All right. So now let's talk a little bit about moksha. So a wise person. A wise person is a jivan mukta, and jivan mukta is simply who knows who they are and knows who they are not. That is, the clarity is there, is present. So that one, called the wise person, never loses sight of what is variable. What is variable here? We said changing, right? I'm bringing another word now, just so bringing different terminology. Variable, that means it varies from one to the other. So a wise person never loses sight of what is variable. Now, knowing what is variable is very easy, isn't it? Let's start with the body, the Annamaya Kosha. Body's moving, right? Variable. Okay, how about your circulation? Pranamaya Kosha. Variable, definitely changing. How about your feelings?
Yeah.
Definitely changing. How about your thoughts?
Yeah.
You're kidding me, totally changing. How about the personality?
Yep.
Yeah, always changing. So a wise person never loses sight of what is variable, which is easy, but also never loses sight of what is invariable. Now, is it a quiz question? What is harder to know, the invariable or the variable?
Invariable.
The invariable?
It depends whether you want to know it in its entirety or just a little bit of it.
Well, see, you cannot know entirely because there is no. See, very good point. Is there a lot of? We're talking about invariable.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of invariable, or is there a little bit invariable? What is that?
Simple.
That's variable. You see, invariable has no attributes. As soon as you say, I know a lot about who I am, what does that imply? That means I can know less about who I am.
Yeah.
That belongs to the realm of what? The variable. So even that is a mistake. So what's harder? The variable or the invariable? See, it depends on your temperament and how much you understand so far. It depends on what stage you're at. That's what it means. That means if you have a lot of, if your mind's very still, very centered, you have no problems knowing about the invariable. If the mind's moving, it's going to move right along with the variable. So it's going to have a very nice friend called Mr. Variable, Mrs. Variable. But it's not going to have such a good time about the invariable. Yeah. So think about this. Do you know within yourself now, when I say within yourself, I mean within your experience, right now, Gareth, is it too warm here?
Huh?
Is it too hot here?
No, I'm fine.
I'm like boiling.
Yeah, I was warm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Within your experience, are you right now conscious of that which is invariable? Invariable. It never changes. Right now, this is a quiz for yourself. Are you aware of that which never changes within yourself?
I'll have to say yes.
Yeah, I'm going to say yes, but yeah,
Okay.
I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
Doesn't it, is it not knowable anyway? I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's dualistic to know something.
Yeah, you see?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, you don't even have to answer.
You can be it but not know it.
That's right. Very good.
So there's no
Yeah.
deception Right?
Yeah.
It's just,
And you can still talk about it as long as you understand from where you're coming from. You see, so you can say I am the self as long as you know what the understanding about that is. So it's not just about just remain quiet. You know, those who are wise don't speak, right? Lao Tzu. You can still say I am, but only under the absolute clarity what that means. If we just say that without knowing what it actually means, then it's just it's a trick of the mind. It's another intellectual thought. Yeah. Okay, how about the variable? Easy. Always changing. Every thought is changing, right? Okay, how about this? We'll do a little experiment. Imagine right now a dog in your mind. Make the dog purple. All right? Now imagine the moon shining. Okay, done. So now the dog came and went. Was the dog present when the moon was present? What was the dog doing to the moon?
It depends which point in time, because I had both. You know?
I had the dog in front of me.
The dog went when the moon came?
But then the dog came back.
The dog came back, right? Because I mentioned dog, yeah. Okay, when I said visualize a dog, the dog was there, no problem.
Yeah.
Now, hopefully you stopped visualizing the dog, and then I said imagine the moon. And then you just entirely focused on the moon.
Yeah.
Now, while you're focusing on the moon, was the dog present?
No.
No, okay, that's a good answer. So that means that the two objects of imagining, the two objects which you witnessed, were there, present. But how is it that, what was prior to that was static? What was there just witnessing one thought of the dog and one thought of the moon? What was that? Because if that principle was also moving, then you wouldn't be able to tell the moon apart from the dog. It would be modified by the dog. So by the time you see the moon, you will see a dog onto the moon. But that wasn't true, was it? You saw the dog clearly and you saw the moon absolutely clearly, right? Why don't you see the dog, mixed with the moon? Because there is some principle which is uncontaminated by the previous thought. And that principle, uncontaminated, still continued when a new thought came. That's why you always are clear about every experience that occurs. You're never confused about whether, am I experiencing joy or happiness or frustration. You're always clear. This is joy. You don't go, oh my God, I don't know if I'm happy or if I'm sad right now. You know exactly because you never modified by the previous emotion. See, that's what we mean by invariable. All right. So the variable is called a vikaraha. That's a modification. It's a technical term. Vikaraha. Repeat, vikaraha. So anything that is a vikaraha is what is called anatma. That is, it's variable. It's not I. Yeah. So it's. So the variable is identified with you. Okay, so now what's the problem with, one's going to ask, what's in it for me for knowing the difference between variable and invariable? We'll try to satisfy the ego just a little bit now. Yeah. So we'll answer the what's in it for me question. Okay, so if you're identified with the variable, the problem is because the mind is always changing. Okay, that means one moment you can feed the mind with a certain philosophy, a certain idea about the world. But because the nature of the mind is always changing, that simply means that a day later, the freshness of that knowledge acquired the day before is no longer fresh the next day. So that leads to a constant need or motivation to refresh the mind with more knowledge. So what does that equate to? It equates to endless satisfaction through knowledge accumulation, trying to, satisfy the manomaya kosha through feeling good. That's the common phrase today, right? Just feel good. That's your job on earth. That's your purpose. Just feel good and you'll be okay. That means what? Identify with the manomaya kosha. See that superimposition operating even in the yoga world. Everywhere I see it. And there is a sense of, because now the mind's changed, so what? It causes dissatisfaction. Because yesterday the thought, that freshness was so good, but that freshness is by the nature of the mind gone. So that causes that subtle dissatisfaction with thinking, I need to re-educate myself. I need to add more knowledge. Obviously, because you're trying to put knowledge in that principle whose nature is change. So that's the problem in, for example, the personal development world, is ongoing, affirmations, ongoing tools for feeling more confident, greater self-esteem. And not only that, but let's take a common example of a woman, for example, identified with the body. They have this constant need to beautify the body. And it just never ends. And it's like there's always a woman that is, with molecules arranged in a better fashion, a more smoother fashion, and then one woman goes, well, since I am the body, I want to look like that. And see, kind of anxiety it causes, it just never lets them have peace. Or even with men, in all sorts of situations, like one guy is more successful and then I would try to replicate or copy because he's cooler. That is what? Identify with his causal body. I'm trying to copy somebody else's causal body. Right. So that means all of these problems stem from the small error of trying to identify and see oneself as the variable. You see? A whole slew of problems come afterwards. And also, of course, the biggest one is because we inherently know that, because see, everyone is a self, everyone is consciousness. Your nature, there is a part of you that knows I am eternal. But identified with the body, we know the body is going to die. That's why we have fear of death. Because we're identified with the body and we know the body is going to die. So I am going to die. So that means that there's a thought that, I'm mortal. I'm going to end one day. And guess what? Ishvara is so kind, right? That it's going to provide you exactly another body to fulfill that thought that I am the body. It's called, next carnation, next body provided. That's why that's why we say that the cycle of birth ends once you are re-identified with the invariable. Because if there is, because to whom, what realm does all of these desires belong to? Satya or mithya? Mithya. And in what principle? The 5 koshas. See, the mind wants to feel good. The intellect wants to be educated and really stimulated. So that means if I'm identified with that, then, this whole a series of problems. Now I want to continue that. And when I die, I still want to continue educating myself. I still want to continue feeling good. And for that, I need another body. And that's why a new body comes. So what does that mean? Every body here that's born means what? We didn't fulfill the highest purpose in the quote. See, there is no thing called reincarnation, but I'm putting it in the words of reincarnation because if I talk in no time, the mind's not going to understand. See, reincarnation implies previous, but there is no time here. But so when I say incarnation, don't think that I'm speaking about the traditional view of reincarnation of body, the next. It doesn't work like that. Yeah, but I'm speaking like that just as a reference point to help you understand how there's a endless continuity that's generated by this problem of not knowing who I am. So that means what? This body, every body here is because the highest purpose, moksha, besides artha, dharma, and kama, was not fulfilled last life. You see? So that means every life is created symbolizing or proving the fact that the previous life wasn't, we haven't discovered who we are in the previous life. Yeah. So that means there is no reason to be reborn after you know who you are, because the desires belong to the koshas, not to me. So what is it? What's in it for consciousness, which is always free, to reincarnate into a body if it doesn't want anything? So of course this comes into a problem where people say, well, just quit your desires, right? But what's the problem with that, the Buddhist approach? Stop your desires. To what realm do the desires belong to?
Mithya.
Mithya. So why are you trying to quit what's not even yours? You see, desires are present. We're not saying ignore your desires.
Stop desiring.
Yeah, exactly. See, exactly. So we're not saying quit desires and just kind of ignore them. We're saying still address, because desires can be, you know, a vasana. There's a tendency, and desire causes me to be entertained in let's say, watch Netflix too much. Then I'm not going to contemplate very often, am I? So see how desires, the vasanas cause desires, and desires cause me to have actions, expressions in the world, which move me away from the highest purpose, contemplation, meditation, Upanishads, reading, assimilation. Yeah, so we're not saying just go, that's a desire, that's not me. No, you know why? Because that desire is still going to have power and pull the person subtly into the direction which doesn't serve moksha. Understand? Okay, so, but at the same time, understand that desires do belong to the 5 koshas. So just by that knowledge alone can one say, okay, well, these desires belong to the let's say, the mano maya, vijnana maya, to the intellect and the mind, but they don't belong. That alone is enough to sort of take away the pressure from having that attraction to fulfill it. You see? Hey, Garrett, do you mind if we turn off the and open the curtain just a little bit? Yeah. Thank you.
I was going to ask, in Vedanta, so if consciousness is eternal and ever-present and so forth, so we drop the body when we die.
Yeah.
In Vedanta, is it conceptualized what consciousness is?
Right.
Because right now, my consciousness is the senses for a human. It's a whole lot of things, thoughts and all that sort of stuff. But
okay.
When we would have a lot of trouble in understanding what consciousness is without the receptive equipment that we've got.
Right. Yeah. Okay. See. Okay.
So is there debates in Vedanta what consciousness form it takes, or
right. Okay.
we couldn't really conceive of it.
I feel you already know the answer to that because see, form is consciousness is formless, so we cannot attribute form to what is formless. So that poses a problem. Then how am I supposed to know what this is if none of my senses can know what it is? Simple answer to that. Right now, I'm going to ask you, are you aware of yourself?
Yeah.
Is anyone not aware of yourself? Now that awareness, Gareth?
That's the form.
No. That awareness is Atman, conditioned by the form.
Okay.
So Atman and form, they're never separate. Is the wool, Atman, separate from the jumper form? So let's do this like this. Let's say you're a jumper. You're this right now. You're a jumper. Is anything missing right now? There's only 2 things in existence: the wool and the jumper. The formless and the form. Is anything missing right now?
No.
Okay, so right now you're unable. You can't say I need something to complete myself because you already are it. You already are it. Okay, so now, but what form is consciousness taking? The wool taking on right now?
That's right. The jumper.
The jumper. Now, Gareth, can you do anything about the fact that you are taking on the form of a jumper?
If that's where I was going to go, yeah, I couldn't do much about it. No.
Okay, so you can't do anything about the fact that you're a jumper right now.
No.
But what is the jumper of? What gives this jumper possibility to exist?
A scarf.
The wool. So that means you, Atman, are never away or separate from your body. You see, this is another dualistic statement that I was going to cover as a mistake. Obviously, we're going to carry on next week. Is that we tend to separate. We think, oh, Atman is some different dimension. And I'm not this, that. So that's why I say you need to come to the point of acceptance. The whole consciousness is always pervading everything, including that body. I'm going to start objectifying your bodies. That body, that body, that body, that body, this projector, this everything, the plant. Now, as soon as a object, as soon as Gareth, I'm speaking, as soon as Ishvara creates an object called Gareth, suddenly that object is there. Okay, before it wasn't there. Suddenly that object, because, you know, the Gareth body grew. Now, before this object, was consciousness, real you, was it there?
Yes.
Yeah. If it wasn't there, then how, then out of what or is this body going to get created? Now, when this object, this baby is grown, and we put the label onto Gareth, is that same consciousness still pervading this object? But now it gets confused, because when it pervades this object, it takes on the attributes of Gareth's mind, Gareth's intellect. So all Gareth needs to know is, yes, it does seem like I am this body. It does seem like I am this thought and this confusion. But despite that, in actuality, I am that which always pervades this body, whether this body is here or not. And even after this body dies, consciousness, Brahman, is still pervading and looking through your eyes. So that means when Gareth's body dies, when Andrei's body dies, I am still looking through your eyes. You understand? Right now, consciousness, am looking through these bodies' eyes. You destroyed this body. What happened? I hasn't been touched. I is still looking through your eyes. It's the same I which remains ever present, unchanged, but as soon as you put another body, that I now suddenly also takes the form of the new body. So that's why it seems like everyone is having separates, you see? So that means if I add another 5 billion people on Earth right now, guess what? Everyone's going to have a different experience. But it's the same I that's always, that was there before the bodies came, is there during the bodies being alive, and is still there when the bodies, explode or whatever happens, or the Earth explodes. So once again, it's a very important point, is that this isn't about trying to separate. It's about coming to acceptance that yes, it seems like I am conditioned by the 5 koshas, but that is not the case. And it only seems like that because, why? Consciousness pervades every single atom in the entire universe. There is no place where consciousness is not. And when that happens to a body, the body goes, well, obviously I am apart from the world because here I am and here's other people. What causes that thinking? Lack of knowledge that despite that appearing like so, that is not the case. Why is that not the case? Because consciousness is always present, always pervading everything.
So does a grain of sand have a sense of I?
No, because the sense of I, you need a subtle body. The ego is that one who possesses or owns the experience of the body, the mind, and the intellect, and the causal body. You need some kind of some kind of a principle which says, this belongs to me. You take the ego out, you wouldn't be able to tell whether it's your experience or somebody else's. So ego is another mechanism to help you to identify yourself as a, quote, individual, called a jiva. You see? So even that I sense, that sense of I, what did I just say? Consciousness also pervades that. So that means, if I ask the question again, what is that principle that is invariable? Do you recognize it? You can't actually say yes. You see that? You can't say yes. Because if you said yes, then what does that mean? Why would you say...
Observer.
Yeah, why would you say yes if by the time I said yes, there's another moment which I'm also aware of. You can only know it. That's why Ramana Maharshi says silence. No one is, but he's not talking about silence that is opposed to sound. This is not a very quiet room. Not that kind of silence. It's only known in silence. Silence, what's pointing to is that silence, that presence on which all of these experiences depend on. Like I said with the dog and the moon, which is prior to the thought of the dog, prior to the thought of the moon.
More stillness than silence.
Yeah. You see, if I give you an example right now, think of a... okay, don't think. When you have a thought about something, right? Were you present before that thought?
Yes.
Absolutely. When that thought is present, you know, there's an emotion, whatever it is about somebody or someone, are you still present?
Yes.
Yeah, that's why you're able to report and share to your friends, oh my God, I had this thought and so on. When that thought finally leaves, are you still present?
Yes.
Okay, now a new thought comes up. But before it comes up, that gap, are you present in that gap?
Yes.
That's why you know there was, you know, thought and then the new thought came a couple of moments later. So you're even aware before the thought, during the thought, after the thought, you're aware of the gap and you're also aware of the next thought. Ongoingly, that unchanging principle never moves. That's the invariable. And these thoughts which come, stay and go, they're ongoing. But how would you know, how would you even say that I have thoughts with a plural if there wasn't some principle which never changed, that never changed in the background?
That's the ground of being.
So, how could you not say, how could you answer no if the question is, are you the invariable?
Yeah.
Because you can only witness the variable from the perspective of the invariable, like from the absolute.
Okay. Okay, so the word no.
Yes.
Okay, so when I say no, you mean like how do you know that?
It's not an intellectual no.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just trying to get the question.
It's an awareness.
It's awareness. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awareness. Okay, let's put it this way. Are you aware right now?
Yes.
How is that it's known that you're aware? Could we say that there was a presence behind your awareness of your awareness?
Yes.
But that awareness, that presence we didn't mention, did we?
It's like mirrors looking into each other.
Yeah. So I'm going to do a little. I'm going to do a little diagram here. Actually, I'll just put this up. I'm just going to find it because it's a very important point that I want to cover now.
So you're saying you can sense it, but you can't know it.
Not even sense it, because because the eye sense is still who's aware of that sense. Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to find it now, and it's going to have some good logic there.
Yeah, I think this is a crucial point.
Yeah. The crucial. We must get it.
If we get this, we've got it. If we haven't got it.
Okay, so this is from Panchadasi. This is a very advanced text. Okay, I know that I know this object. So in other words, let's just stick in the brackets right now. Ignore the other one. Are you aware?
Yes.
Are you aware of your awareness? What I just said, are you aware of your awareness? Okay, let's put it.
The object is the awareness.
Yeah, the object is the awareness, and are you aware of that object?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so let's change the linguistics. I know that I exist. Okay?
Yes.
So now the object is existence. So I know that I exist. Now, when we all together, let's together say, I know I exist.
I know I exist.
Now, there was some prior principle because of which it knew that you just had an experience of saying, I know I exist. That prior principle is called, I know that I exist. And that prior principle is the witness knower. It's the non-participating, non-interfering, silent principle of knowledge. It's that principle, the knowledge that knows about whatever you say. And you can never touch it. You can never communicate it, because even if you try to communicate about it, you still know that you communicated about it. That principle is I know. That's Atman, Brahman. That's all we're saying. Clear?
Yeah.
John?
Yeah. As soon as you express it.
As soon as you express it, you still knew that you expressed it.
Yeah.
You still knew that you were trying to become aware of it. You still knew that you tried to know about your existence. I exist. I'm aware. But what you cannot ever say...
It's got to be impressive, not expressive.
That's right. But you cannot ever say that silent first I know, that's always there in the background, always aware of whatever you try to philosophize or say about it. Okay, a few heads are shaking. Good. John, how are you going?
How am I going?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going really well.
Okay. Good start.
If I say, I am that,
Yeah.
then
Good.
it feels like I'm acknowledging that I'm the whole.
Yeah, okay.
Consciousness.
Okay, good. Okay, the reason why Nisargadatta, he has a book called I Am That. He's saying that from the point of view of knowledge. That is meant to point the seeker who doesn't yet know that. He's simply speaking from the understanding that I already am that. So that is a simple instruction for the one who is not fully primed for. It's a pointer for someone who's trying to get it. You see? So Nisargadatta, when he says I am that, he's speaking from the already enlightened point of view, from the already knowledgeable point of view. But if an ignorant person says the same statement, where is that coming from? The ego or the knowledge. So you see, it depends who's saying the same statement. It depends on what the understanding is. So you can say I am that only in context of trying to teach it to another person. But if you are already that, why would you need to say that?
You wouldn't want to say it.
That's right, you wouldn't want to say it. There's no need to say it, right? Because it's obvious. It's so obvious. It's like saying, I'm a man. Did you guys know? I'm a man. I've got a male body. You're like, what's wrong with you? That's pretty obvious. Why are you even saying that? Same thing here. We don't need to mention what's already always present in your experience. You're always present. Tell me one thing that stayed in your life longer than you. When I say you, I mean that principle which was always witnessing all of these other things coming and going.
Nothing.
Huh? One thing.
Nothing.
What was with you from the day of being born on earth? What was with you for the longest amount of time?
Consciousness.
You. Because you are consciousness. See, that's what we mean. That means you were always present. You were that's what we're trying to look for. We're trying to look for that one who is already that. We're trying to look for me, but I already am me. So how can I look for something which I already have? That's what we mean by the second category of Vedanta here. And we said, praptasya prapti. We are acknowledging what was already present all along. You. Okay. How are we going on this? Because we're going to recover this like hundreds of times in different words.
So meditation just should be renamed thought management.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, meditation, Gareth, is only valid and properly used when the mind has already come to a point of clarity. Otherwise, meditation becomes a fight with thoughts and a fight with mithya. So meditation's purpose is only actually right at the end, and we're going to cover meditation in the Bhagavad Gita. And a lot of people don't know this. The first thing a seeker does in a spiritual world is go straight into meditation. Wrong. First, purify the mind, still the mind, concentration, get the mind to the concentration point so it doesn't wander off. Because the point of meditation is to take these statements from the Upanishads and inquire about them amidst your meditation. Not to fight with the lower levels, I don't mean to integrate it, but with the levels of thought. For that you use karma yoga. For that you just use a whole bunch of modalities that are available in the world for stilling the mind. No. Okay. Okay, let's close. And what we're going to cover next week is...
Oh, just warm it up.
Yeah. I just had no idea. I'm just only going to cover this. I mean, we have mistakes, common mistakes, two more mistakes, another mistake, bodies and face. Okay, we covered this sort of. And then secret to living Vedanta. How to put it into practice, which you're already getting the idea. I don't need to sort of sell you how to do this. You already know, yeah. Om sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om shanti shanti shantihi. May all be happy, may all be free from illness, may all behold good things, may no one suffer.